think everybody has a fond memory of New Orleans. If you're ever in New Orleans, you got to try the beignets. Cafe du Monde. I don't care how long you wait in the line. You haven't been to New Orleans unless you try a beignet. Now these things are light and fluffy. You can see how they make it. And then they sprinkle the powdered sugar on the top. They literally melt in your mouth. They're so warm and chewy and sweet. Don't eat too many. Hello, New Orleans. It's good to be back. You know, I was here once before. And it was so loud. So many people on the street partying, intoxicated. The jazz and the blues music. Performers out on the street, just singing and dancing. And the streets are so narrow, it's hard to drive. The French Quarters, the buildings, a work of art. You know, New Orleans has been through a lot. And I don't think that some people can understand how much a city and a people have been through. But you get a glimpse of it when you speak to people from New Orleans. Resiliency. It's below sea level, so it's always flooding in New Orleans. But in 2005, we all remember Hurricane Katrina. 80% of the city of New Orleans was affected. 1,800 people lost their lives. 50% of the population of the city of New Orleans left. They went to Houston. They went to Dallas. They went to Riley. They went to Greensboro. They went to Richmond. They left New Orleans. And even now, New Orleans still hasn't fully and completely recovered from Katrina. And that happened in 2005. It goes to show you that repairing something can take a long, long time. Decades. Centuries. But New Orleans, you've been an interesting city inside an interesting state. You were first colonized by the French, and then Spain, and then became France again. And then you were purchased by the United States. We've all heard about the 1803 Louisiana Purchase. And then you became a state, the state of Louisiana. And as soon as you became a state, you seceded from the Union and became the Confederate State of Louisiana. And then after the Civil War, you were part of the United States again. So you had a lot of ebbs and flows, changes in your existence. But before colonialism, indigenous tribes warred and fought over the territory too. There's always been tumultuous events that have happened in Louisiana and in New Orleans. The Big Easy. I went and I was impressed by the saxophone players, the trumpet players, the bands with the drums. It's so loud. It's so boisterous. But there's a spirit there. A spirit of resiliency. You know, they say Lawrence is the chocolate-covered sea. But we've got to be honest about something. The residents and people in New Orleans, it's not just beignets and sunshine and rainbows for them. It started a long time ago. The hardship, the difficulty, the atrocities. It started in 1724 when large ships carrying enslaved African bodies arrived in New Orleans. That's how it started. Justification to enslave and mistreat, beginning with the French, Cold War, where it restricted free human beings who happened to be black from doing what they wanted to do just because they were black. Discrimination. When people say discrimination never happened, they're fucking lying. You ought to know they're lying to you. It's not a theory. It's a fact. New Orleans. That tradition carried on long after the French relinquished control. Because it only got worse when the United States took over Louisiana for black people. It didn't get any better. It got worse. It was one of the worst places to be in the 1800s, the 1700s. French forced all of the enslaved Africans to convert to Roman Catholicism. So, I don't know why some people want to try to act like, oh, because you're not religious, you must be a horrible, atrocious monster. When it was the people who used religion to commit the most atrocious, horrible, heinous, and monstrous things on our planet. You know, you can bullshit other people, but you cannot bullshit me. We know. Now, I ask you, has New Orleans paid any restitution for the crimes, the inhumanity that were committed for centuries and generations against the African American community? Somebody's going to say yes. And they're going to say, New Orleans. Didn't the former mayor of Great Nation say it was Chocolate City? Aren't black people in governance in New Orleans? You gotta look at it like this. There's New Orleans, the city, the most populous city in the whole entire state of Louisiana. Maybe about 300-something thousand people, give or take. And then you got Baton Rouge, which is kind of like New Orleans, but a little bit more conservative than New Orleans. And then you got the rest of the state, the super conservative, and very much racist. Kind of like having a meeting where there's 15 individuals present at the table in the meeting. And 2 of the 15 are black or women. And everyone else there is a white male. And then everyone congratulating themselves. We finally have diversity. We finally have equity. We finally have inclusion. Before, there were all 15 members were white men. Now we have 2 members that are non-white. This is monumental. This is achievement. This is progress. This is oftentimes what people will tell themselves to justify, continue really horrible behavior that they're working on. They're trying to do better. They're getting there. They're making progress. Now I know the real progress is not just symbolism. It's not just giving 2 people that come from a community of millions of people a voice. It's not just lifting up two people. To come from a community of millions. No. That's not progress. That's symbolism. And that makes certain people feel good about themselves. They feel as though they allowed it. They made it happen. I ask you something. Isn't that the same thing as well? Ownership, in essence. If you hadn't have done it, nobody else would have done it. Is what they think. And then because they did it, the praise and congratulations should go to them. There's 2 less hungry mouths. There's 2 less people on the welfare lines. There's 2 respectable black people. So you can't criticize us for all the rest of the people that are failing, that are not doing well. They should be just like those 2 people who sit on the board, who we gave an opportunity to, who we uplifted. And if they're not just like them, well, it's their fault. They failed. They're illiterate. They're criminals. They're losers. It has nothing to do with us. It's all of them. But then if you even mention anything about the systems, about the atrocities, about how the past impacts the present, which will impact the future, you even approach that, you're vilified, chastised. You look and you see what they did to Nicole Hannah Jones. Simply because she told the truth. An inconvenient truth. That people don't want to be bothered. That people don't want to have to acknowledge. Because if you acknowledge it, New Orleans, then you couldn't do the symbolism bullshit. You couldn't paint murals of Black Lives Matter. Put up statues of George Floyd. Try to take down all the Confederate flags at public parks. Take down generals of the Confederate that were up in public monuments. Then you couldn't just stop there. You'd actually have to repair the nation. You'd actually have to do restitution. And institutions, powerful individuals who are responsible for those atrocities. They would have to be brought to bear. And folks in those institutions who are institutionalists, they don't want to have to think about what their institution what it did to other human beings. The depravity and the inhumanity that it inflicted on other human beings. They want to be able to get up and go to work in their suit and tie and say, I work for such and such. But a simple Google search will tell you that that institution that you work for is seeped and saturated in hatred, bigotry, and racism. You're just going to put on the suit and tie and say you work for the institution and that you're a noble individual without having to recall and recollect the damage that that institution has done to other human beings. They will vilify you if you challenge those notions, concepts, and beliefs. You've got conservatives hating Nicole Hannah-Jones, but they can't disprove anything that she's arguing or articulating in the 1619 Project. Are you disputing that the ships didn't arrive in 1619 with enslaved African bodies? Are you disputing the institution of slavery in America in the centuries it lasted, in the millions of African bodies that were murdered, raped, pillaged, plundered? No, they're not disputing any of that. They're just disputing the inconveniency of it being brought up. It's an inconvenient truth that the Americans don't want to have spoken about. Because we're better now. We're all good. Everything's sunny. And there's rainbows. And the birds are chirping. But you go and you talk to the people of New Orleans. They don't feel this way. They feel forgotten, left behind, abandoned, neglected, tortured, vilified, treated inhumanely. Not in 1724 or 1619. Not in 2005. I'm talking about February 22, 2022. Today. Citizens all over New Orleans feel as though they're not cared about by anyone in government. And it's because they're not cared about by anyone in government. Government has never cared about the residents who are black in New Orleans. Not the city, not the state, not the federal government. There's been no restitution for any crimes committed. How can you say you're a nation of law and order, justice for all, when you know not a damn African American in New Orleans has had justice for all the crimes for centuries done to them. By the French, by the Spanish, by the Confederacy, by the United States government. People want to sit there and criticize this flag, these symbols, as though I'm supposed to fly the stars and stripes. Let me tell you something, that has not done anything, even remotely, in the same universe to black people as the stars and stripes has done. The Confederacy, it lasted 4 years, from 1861 to 1865. The New Orleans Police Department, they wear the American flag as a patch on their uniform. It's emblazoned on their SWAT cars. It's those police officers, the sheriff's department. You go and you look at what happened to Ronald Green. They tortured him. They beat him. He begged for mercy as white supremacists and white Nazis brutally dragged him and beat him to death. And then those police officers, they lied about what occurred. That they had lynched a black man. This didn't happen in 1724 or 1619. It happened in 2021. You go and you look at Ronald Green. You don't want your children to see that. It's that critical race theory. You know why that shit can happen still to this day? Because there's been no accountability, New Orleans, for what happened prior. If I know I can get away with something, no matter what it is, that's not accountability. You've had white supremacy in Louisiana, in New Orleans. Get away with all type of shit to this day. And there's been no accountability, no restitution, no justice. And they say no justice, no peace. But that's a lie too. Because there has been peace for the perpetrators of the injustice. They haven't paid any price for anything they've done in this nation. They haven't been held accountable. They haven't lost anything. They haven't sacrificed anything. And then you wonder why Ronald Green can be lynched and tortured in that manner by people who take an oath to uphold and serve and protect. Then you wonder why that happens. I don't wonder. I know why. A lack of accountability and a lack of restitution. New Orleans. This is it. This is the only way to repair the nation. cannot repair this nation without reparations. You're like, maybe there's something else. No. This is it, New Orleans. This is it. The good news. We gotta do this quick. It'll be easy. It's an investment in everybody. You know, rarely is something a win-win for everyone. It's rare as fuck in life that a win for one group is a win for every group. There's no L in doing reparations for the descendants of Africans. There's no L in that. Everybody benefits and wins this in New Orleans. And then there's no shaming and blaming anyone nowadays. So there's no losers. And there's no shaming or blaming. Why would you have anyone opposed to this? It's your thought. Well, the individuals that tortured Ronald Green, they're probably going to be critics of it because, well, wait for it, shocker, they're racist. The individuals who tomorrow, February 23rd, at 1 p.m., it's the anniversary of the lynching of Ahmaud Arbery 2 years ago. The McMichaels, Roddy Bryant, they probably would be against reparations because they're racist. And people are like, well, those are just ordinary American citizens. But ordinary American citizens can run for office and hold elected office. So Rand Paul from Kentucky, he would be against it because he's a racist. Mitch McConnell from Kentucky, he would be against it because he's a racist. Tom Cotton from Arkansas, he would be against it because he's a racist. Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee, she would be against it because she's a racist. John Kennedy from Louisiana, he would be against it because he's a racist. What makes you think just because they have a title in front or behind their name, and because they wear a suit and a tie, and they can talk in front of a camera, that they're not racist, just like the McMichaels, just like the police officers that tortured Ronald Green? Everybody wants to try to pretend as though they're better now. But what have you done? What can you share that will lead me to believe that that's true? Have you paid any restitution for the crimes you've already committed? No. Has there been any justice served? Finally, at long last, in the deep South, on this day, Ahmaud Arbery continued to get justice for his lynching solely because he was black in Brunswick, Georgia. There hasn't been any restitution. In New Orleans, that needs to change. I know you can do it. You do big things. The Saints. You're the home of the New Orleans Saints. You know they say they want to be in that number when the Saints come marching home. I don't know if that's going to be the case. You gotta do big things if you want to be a saint. You gotta do big things to be in the marching line when the Saints come marching home. People don't want to do jack shit, but then want to say they're saintly. And you look outside, and based off of their actions, not their words, their actions, their deeds, I wouldn't recommend that they be in a line with when demons come marching home. I wouldn't want to be in a line with any of them. They haven't done jack shit for you in New Orleans. On all things considered and on all goodness, New Orleans, you listen to me. They have not done jack shit for you. So it's time for you to do it for you. It's a shame. It truly is. That you wait and you sit there and you do nothing. And then you chastise the individuals who you know are holding you accountable for your inactions, your misgivings, and your atrocious lack of care for human beings. New Orleans, stand up and stand out. Get loud. Now's the time. You shouldn't have to linger in abhorrent conditions. The same people that say, oh, you'll get your seed, your tithing in heaven. The same people that tell you, wrong is thy suffering. They're not suffering on their private jets. They're not suffering in their $1 million mansions. Why they sing the praise and the gospel. You sit in abject poverty, starving, in a tent,